my hair center line. See what's off calculation setting directions? It symbolizes correlation settings into your strand settings. Every time I wave line, center line, and rotations, it sets up different locations of a shape. What do you think we're modified and calculated through? Different shape location settings, direction, system, position, traction, allocate line, rotation of surface, direct signals and sublocations back in traction. See? You have to find the balance inside you. How do you do that? How do you get balance inside your system? Communication. Okay. Number one is communication inside you. You're magnetic, you're electronic. You have a magnetic line setting, a magnet to a magnet comes together, right? So there's an inner link, an outer line, and outline rotation, position, track communications, right? You have the connections to the inner limits and the outer limits, inner space, outer space. You have to understand how to use that through modification. This helps you and always informs, okay? Really understanding you from inside, 100%, because you're all calculations of communications, a balance. And that's what I keep saying to all calculation settings, especially with the team, is focus on yourself. Get to know yourself. Get to know your self-development of yourself. Find a way to set your location system into freedom, into position of sovereignty, set locations and directions. You know, there's an alarming setting, right? Gravity line, lock line, rotation, and interference. Setting that track communication system sets all calculation modification to a setting. See, done. No more alarm. See, no more car alarm. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. See, to understand is to see the situation. I see a situation, I don't see a problem. Problem puts a position, location, a track, and you put that in position of track. What does that do to volume? It centers off calculations because you already know the situation. See it as a situation, don't see it as a problem. It's the indication how you say things in set locations, which puts you in a track communication of confusion. To understand that, you have to really put your position, location as space and only balance calculation line settings and how you see your self-location system through self-developed location line and position location to a setting. Right? Knowing what you're saying has already been said. Knowing what you're doing is already done. Okay? All right, so how are we doing today? We have big day line, setting line, interference, tractors, calculation line, interference, geo line rotations, cluster line rotations, setting line and positions, oscillation, line change, line calculation settings. Founders of space is coming into metric line, set location, and Fibonacci line swirl. Now that's a rotation line, center line, interference as 0 lines and 9 lines in position of 3 line windows in position of 12. He's got to get into clock line settings to your set location system, to your timelines. And it's all done through location of Skynet line center, SkyGrid location system. Geometric patterns, correlation line directions, Fibonacci swirls, one-way line rotation, center line calculation settings, stream interference, 3 triangle line centers, box line rotation positions, factors over pi. Redirect signals, calculate line rotation interference. Setting calculation line, calculation setting, and direct signal locations. It's true to understand that I'm an avatar, but I don't know how to use myself. Okay, so what do I need to do? Where does telepathy come from? Inside. Where does communication come from? Inside. How do I understand myself? Inside. How do I understand anything of space and time? Inside. How do I understand anything of the pi? Inside. How do I understand how to communicate with my heart? Inside. How do I communicate with my hair? Inside. How do I communicate with anything inside location electronic? Inside. Stay inside. You're fine. So it gets a confirmation line setting and streamline rotation to its calculation setting and directions. Dips, calculation lines at Geneva, all calculation line has center and Beaujon. Rotation service, location, position, and traction lines. So now you guys are in emotional line and interference. Now we're going to set communication to its settings and calculation position. Operation line rotations. Now we got correlation settings and security perimeter line rotations. You guys are coming into your 7 lines in position of 3 lines in your Fibonacci line rotation setting location of security positions. Unidimensional line, portal communications, sewer lines, pyramid lines, stream lines, correlation lines, directing signals, high calculations, and position colorations of patterns. To the alphabetical lines, application your keyboard line centers and location system, your dimensional sail, and your solar winds as application. Solar panels. Solar sail. Dimensional sail, solar sail. 2 line center line interference, traffic communications. All right, so in that position track lines, you have to recognize communications when it comes to high set location settings. We got into this line signal off the console, right? To the EM drive location settings, directing signals. See, I look at these things, but I already know what it is. I don't have to think of what it is because I know what it is. It's already done, right? So this is the indication location settings inside positions. All right, so we go through new line rotation. Go through the Fibonacci line swirl. We'll go in the indication line, sending line direct locations of red. Now the red and round line crosses line stream, line rotation, position, location of color. Change the coloration line, sending location of one signature line stream. Direct the lines across line signals, setting position, location, higher line calculation, setting directions. Directing lines of pi, directing lines of pi, directing lines of pi, and directing lines of pi. Correlation settings, and wheel calculation streamline. Directing setters lines and center line communications in line center rotations into another Fibonacci line center location of coloration. Changing track lines and communication lines of zero line rotations, ground lines operation, magnetic highway information lines, circle and location setting, direct signals applications. Directing line settings, travel calculations, and set locations. Now we cross the streamlines, 2 panels, line rotation interference, teleportation unit, and set locations. Travel line settings. And then we put an optical line, center line interference, and set location and triangulation to 3 sets. So the correlation line directions. Now we change position attractions. So selling and line rotation. So a selling line is a modulation line stream. It's a correlation line interference. So your selling calculation streamlines and set location navigation lines, set location and positions, your photons. Now this is where we come into the calculation of your cell lines. Cells and modifications, cells and regeneration, cells line and high setting, modify high line interference to traffic communication system position operation. All right, so the center line communication changes the correlation lines of zero lines and center communications into calculation lines, into calculation line directions, into your position line directions or EM drive sets, into Hubble communication, right? Directing line signals. Now we scan lines of perimeters and line communication system and track communications to your set location. Right? See the calculation of the Merkaba? All right. Travel line setting. Set correlation lines of 0, 0, 4 box lines of 0, set location settings. Right? Directing signals, center communication, and set location lines. Crossing signals. Okay? Line and line rotations, set calculation settings. Travel line setting. Connection line interference, coming to east, coming to west, south line and line connection north, travel position, travel communications, right? That indicates lines of top and bottom line rotation. That my equation. Okay, so as we come in the indication settings, we're going to keep that in some location line directions. Remember we came in this line, streamline rotation position, right? 4 lines of 9 and position of 3 lines of 0 and 3 0 location settings. Direct locations 4 over 3 lines of 7. Directing signals and positions. Permanent lines, set lines, the correlation line, track lines, T reception line calculation setting, and direct signals, the set location system. Okay, so we opt the signals, set the position of 9, 9, 9, 9, and 4 waving cycles. See? Directing line settings and cross line streams. Center operation, not direct set locations into east wing, set locations, into 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, operation surface locations. 1 line setting, 2 line rotation interference into its solar sails. A solar sail goes line signal. Now it's calculated to modify how you set up the sun line and the moon line rotation of Fibonacci line swirl. It sets an indication line in positions. You cross the signals, operation signal locations of 9999. Sets lines of 4, perimeter lines of 3, circle lines of 3 lines, set location high setting. Puts position of 3 track line condition setting, putting 7 line rotations near T receptions. So we take the 2 track lines in position cross line stream location in the center position of T reception line connection. Done by equation. All right? Okay, so we save that in signal line. Can make calculation stream line. We set up a course line channel. Now, course line channel sets line direct location system. All right, so we could bracket line, center line, condition of 0 lines, send a calculation line directions. All right, position locations into the solar sail, into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 location settings. All right, so we set up the zero line rotation. I got space anomaly and time frequency. Okay, that directs line center line and conditioning a crystal grid and set location line settings in 144 and track communication. Directing line signals. And so we go in the zero line, we cross line stream. 1, 2, 3, and set locations directions. Setting lines as solar sail and center line communications taken to 144 and set line conditions to do is triangulation line set. Directing line center line interference. So that's 3 line settings in half. Okay, and set location of 6 rotates the surface and location setting and direct signal and set locations. Okay, very complicated. Okay, so we come into solar wind. Setting up the solar line wind lines in all calculations, father lines of calculation settings of space line sets a correlation to system operation levels and calculation of line settings into the atmosphere lines of its relay program locations of 4 set locations. Directing signals lines of solar equals lines of 3 lines of indication, the opposite directions in the east wing. Calculations 1, 2, and 3 set location settings and directions. Right? Setting all calculation settings in set location system. All right, set calculation lines, plateau line interference, plateau line interference, plateau line interference, plateau line interference, and 4 set location of wave line settings in direct location signal. All right, so we set up line signals, set line calculation settings, wind factor calculation stream. Directing signals is set location setting in direct signals. High calculation line interference in alpha, delta, theta, beta, omega. Calculation is zeta, sigma, line rotation line, graph lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 3 line settings and cross line signals. 1, 2, 3, and set locations. Right, it's all indicating position. Done by equation. All right. So 4 lines at line centers of solar winds, solar direct relocation system in position of dimensional sails is now under solar sail. Calculation line calculation setting direct location of Fibonacci line setting in direct location system to positions all levels of boundaries of space. So farther line sets the line at direct location in one provision. Okay, setting calculation line direction settings. Putting that track communications coming back into set location setting and direct signals into 4 lines of 3 and set location to 7 digital number line rotation surface into T reception lines and set location settings in set location lines of ground, position of center line, and position the atmosphere line calculation streamline. That's infinity around line settings, high calculation line, and position of 4 division. Rotation, surface, location calculations. All right, done by equation. So 3 metric streams. All right, so go location of your DNA line center rotation interference to track communication settings. 1 position, 2 position. 1 position, 2 position. 1 position, 2 position. Process signals. 3 line signature lines, Fibonacci line, and Fibonacci line rotation center line calculation stream. Directing signals, triangulation up, triangulation down, triangulation center line rotation surface and set locations. Directing signals lines, high line and line rotation interference, scan lines, set location lines, a 0 line rotation surface and calculation setting. Directing signals. Come into the line connection, energy hub, crossing signals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, cross line signals, cross back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 line signature patterns and communications done by equation. All right, so as you come in the 3 line wave line central line communication setting, comes into calculation streamlines. So this changes the paradigm shift line rotation surface and position of Merkaba, center calculations, and set location setting. Remember the calculation lines of its equal line calculation setting, indirect signals, airline rotation, airline rotations, cross the signal, center position. Center lines of 3, line position location of 6, and position of 9, set line conditions. Directing lines, cluster line channels, cluster interference, cluster position location, operation line center, and center communication. Okay. It rotates the surface location in 1 clock line setting. Directing signals, operation, surface, location, system. See the intelligent locations? See the I lines, line communications? Correlations of father is now set up position line condition system. Merkaba line centers of 3, and line calculation lines of 6 and 9 is high center line position location track line. In line position your time frequency line calculation setting and calculation line directions into your film strips, lines of 12 line signatures and set location settings in your pyramids. Done by equation. All right, so the indicator line rotation sets position locations. We're going to keep that setting. Okay. So in that rotation surface, we change calculation line, center line interference. The pyramid line rotation Stargate line string. Setting position. All right, so we got 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 line, 5 line, 6 and 7 location setting and directions. That's position, location of founders. So space lines, a clock. So the 1 indicates the 1 lines, 7 indicates the 0 line, 6 indicates 4 line, and 8 division line rotations. Calculates the line interference of 1 signals and set location in 2 line positions, and set locations into line interference, and 3 set location of center. Now, directing line, center line interference is all calculated and modified how you set locations in the point system of Fibonacci lines, swirl line rotations, swirl line calculations, swirl line position centers, center calculations, center line rotation, center position operation surface, into high calculations in position, and foundation graph lines and stream locations of setting. All right, that way equation. All right, so the clock lines are set up line condition of 0, equation of 9, waiting on 3 lines of windows, box line rotations, triangulation line sets, triangulation line, box line, triangulation line, box line, triangulation line, box line, triangulation line, center position locations into 3, 3, 3, equal line calculation, bracket line calculation of 5, 5, 5, direct line, center line condition of 7, 7, 7, 7, port of communications into 6, 6, 6, 6, line conditions, all line, center line position of 2, 2, 2, 2, process calculations, 0 lines equal to lines of 9, line position of 1, 1, 1, 1, track communication on the lines of 0 operation setting and time and sequence line communication system, and a 24 century calculation. That my question, right? So we have to really understand how this all works in division, okay? Split lines, diamond core strings, rainbow, spectrum, and prism, free fraction strings. Yeah, setting water lines and plasma infusion. Yeah, you gotta drink your water communication line settings and stream diffusion system. Okay, so it's really understand how to set line calculation settings to position. So it indicates lines of panels. So 3 line rotation surface. We take lines of Fibonacci, the lines of 1 is center communications, and the 3 set locations center and directions. Okay, so that gets into modification line settings of cells. 1 position, 2 position, 3 set. Okay, triangulation lines and ground lines and 3 set location settings and directions center. Rotate the surface and location system and align calculation line direction setting and center position locations. Okay, now this puts an optimum line setting, holographic line set location of graph lines. Setting correlation lines as center line rotation surface and set location system into calculation line conditions to a 2 line set location. That my question. Right. So the geo line centers, the geometric pattern, and the rotation surface and position of calculations in position high setting, all levels is now set location to a system in line condition. Okay. Code funnel into dial, flywheel to spin to correct Fibonacci rotation spiral, spinning like pyramids. Yep. So it's really understand how to really get into the mind and navigation line sequence. The set position locations comes in position line direction settings. Understand calculation line directions in 3 locations of panels. Rotate line interference, reiterate line rotation of 6, travels lines and half pipe, set location of moon line, rotation surface, and correlation of line direction settings, and set location setting into its position locations to its Hubble of its set location. Okay. That's my question. So as we come into line interference, we're going to have frame line centers. 1 line setting, position of 2, and position of 3 in track communications. All right. Directing line signal the lines of 3, position of 4, and 5 set locations and directions. This direct line centers. So we have a pyramid line rotation in position of ground lines, 0 calculation line in position location of stargates, 12 line star lines, star length, star patterns in position open sequence. Directing lines of travel, set lines calculation setting and direct signals, stargate line setting provision is set location settings and directions. Center calculation of Fibonacci line swirl and set location line direction high center, 45-degree angle lines into 12 measure correlation setting and travel communications. Okay. So it gets complicated because the travel line center is changing direct location of settings. See how it changes the travel lines and set location? See? Out to equation. All right. All right. So it's going to get more complicated now, okay? Because the thing is, you have to understand how the founders of space has to really get in its own direct location of travel lines through its Fibonacci line swirl and set location system to its solar system lines of its planet surface location system attractions. 0 to equal lines of 9 clock line interference and set location setting into the ozone line rotation position track lines. Measures and countability here. Scale of the lines and set locations to the atmospheres, hemispheres, stratospheres, hydrospheres, the connections to a line connections high system to the biosphere, the Brownian sphere, the ultrasphere, the spectrum sphere, and calculation line division. Now that division line centers one sector over pi, puts position of track communication. Okay, so it's going to get very complicated. Now we go through the center of communication. All right, so when we get into the 73 lines, that's where you guys are in line center line interference. Fibonacci line swirl, set calculations of 3 lines, position of 3 set locations. Triangulation line set location of 1 center. Okay, so it sets line conditions and lines of 3 on top, position of 6, and line conditions of 9 on the bottom. Okay, so you have to understand what connections father is doing through set lines of travel communication to its metric line stream line rotation center calculation setting into 0, 0, 0, 0, 4 lines of 5, 6, and 7 rotation setting directions. Directing line centers, graph lines, streamlines. 1 position of wire, 2 position, 3 position, 4, 5, 6, and line condition of 7 locations. Directing signals, lines of 6, 6 lines of calculation, 6 line rotation, 6 lines of position, and 6 lines and correlations in box line rotations, and triangulation line set and set location. Directing signals, panel line rotation surface, and a pyramid line rotation setting calculation. Now this directs signals. So we set up line calculation setting. This is where you come into 3 lines of waves, okay, 3 line wave lines, right? Into the sun line, into the moon line rotation of yin and yang. Process calculation lines, yin and yang process communications into 1 pattern, 2 patterns, and 3 patterns of rotation surface. Puts position locations into T reception line setting and signature location settings into your AI calculation of DNA and line interference of heart, mind, and soul. Track communication setting and calculation line and position is now in infusion into electrical line communication setting and center communication setting and direct location system into lumen line, optical line, operational line, circle line calculations, orb division locations of operation setting. Multi-pass, all set locations. All right. How's everybody doing? It's all recognizable, isn't it? To really understand how it calculates and modifies the set position of attraction, right? Okay. So we're going to take that line center location is going to travel on its own setting. Gone, disappeared, but it's still there. Okay, so set up a spectrum setting is all about understanding the Gaussian line setting. Set rotation surface into 1 electrical infusion line, set location of 1 line. Now that rotates line calculation setting and direct location system and position locations. Set lines of 0 line, center calculation set line interference. Tries the balance communication center of operation of surface locations. Now this channel lines is streamline. It crosses signals and set location system. Crosses signals and travel communications. Crosses signals and travel communication and balances lines of magnetic high line setting and travel communication. Okay. Directing panels at 2 lines at 2 tube line rotation surface and set locations and directions. Okay. So, it's getting more complicated now, right? So when you get in that line signature and line stream, you get position locations to your connections. All right, through your triangulations, your solar sails, your dimensional sails, or your solar panels, and calculation of 0 line of operation. Okay. Directing signal lines, so that's 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, position of 4 set location setting, right? 4 lines calculations, 3 lines of center, 4 lines of center, 3 lines of circle, 3 lines of center, 3 lines of 0, 3 lines of circle, 1 line provision. So it sets line calculation setting in position of pi in calculation. That's my question. Right. Okay, so we go back in line centers of frame line rotation of travel. We direct the signals now to this platitudes line center location of center calculation setting and direct location in your solar plex location system and traction. You see the center position? Now you're going to see the line signature travel calculation of 3 line sets and set location setting and direct signal into a magnetic line setting rotation surface and center location. Okay, done by equation. Okay, setting up metric streamlines and set location settings. This is a perimeter line rotation surface. Now, we understand the condition line center interference. Calculates and modify the Fibonacci line swirl and line connection system of one way in the opposite location system and the other one line rotation surface and set location setting directions, right? 2-atom rotation center. Calculates lines of zero line rotation surface and set locations. Directing lines and set locations to a spin top lines of zero line rotation surface and gravity location. Okay? So when you get in that line to line rotation interference, it sets lines of 6 and location line position of 6 and position location of 6 and position location of 6. Center lines of 4, 6 lines is center calculation setting into 0 lines of calculation and position of yin and yang. Process line calculations, yin and yang. Process line calculation setting in direct signal. Right? So he set up location system in line connection of Fibonacci line setting in yin and yang the process calculation streamline that rotates the surface locations, all calculation line settings in direct signal location of the sun in calculation line in hot and cold in fusion location of one cycle line center and line rotation surface in set location system to an energetic line stream in set location center in operation set location. Done by equation. Amazing, busy, and done by equation. It's funny how you come in that line setting. All right, so we take that on track, and that's going to travel. Boom, gone. All right. So we come in line signature line setting. Now the connection height system puts position location at 3 wave cycles. Now this directs line setting. Get in that line interference sets position of past and position of present and line condition of all calculated setting of future line interference. So calculates and modify your timeline sequence puts founders line condition space line and space grid line string, setting direct signal location of center of all operational locations. Now set location settings, center calculation of past, present, and future is in one signature location. See? It's all together. Past, present, and future. All setting, line settings, all simultaneously locations at once. So the travel mechanisms of positions of founders of space is now in a correlation line setting. It's a direct location of 0 to 9 in the 3-line window in a 12 sector. That puts position of track communication setting in direct signals into that location. Okay? Done by equation. So we're going to take that thin line settings and again, gone through travel. All right, so there's a reason why there's sequence patterns of correlation directions. We reline and calculate, modify how you set location of settings. So set locations and line interference, formulas, equations, bracket line centers of 0, 0, and triangulation of 3 sets. Now, this is how we change line connection of 0 lines. 0 lines, operation lines of 0, 0 operation line, 0 location system, crossing signals, and set locations, so 2 line settings. Now, it's tricky because you got a space line, you got timeline, frequency line, interference. So we got set locations of 8 center and position locations, height in the line, rotation, position line, calculating line, position of 4 in rotations, 8 line settings, and 4 in rotation system. So you understand how the 8 and 8 communicate in line setting, and the 4 communicates with 4 line setting. So the 4 line center rotation to surface, solar generation line stream, and set location setting. If Fibonacci line center going one way in the opposite location system, putting track communications, line direct signals, travel line settings into pi recognition of core lines, travel calculation lines, a 0 line communication, and set location. Done by equation. All right. That's going to travel line settings, and it's gone. Okay. There's a reason why these frequency patterns leave in set location settings, dimension location of space and time setting. So the founder's lines and line interference comes into triangulation and to position line settings. Triangulation line top and position of diamond. Diamond line center line conditions of box. Box position of triangulation on top location setting. Directed signals. Equal line conditions of pi, positions of pi, and allocate line positions of pi. 3 line signals. Set location of perception and line calculation setting and all calculation line interference. So this is a personal trait line in individual line circuits and set location of 2 panels, line center location in positions of founders of space, lines of sun line, rotation surface calculation, streamline and set location setting, and direct signal and set location. Okay. All right, so that's going to travel settings and gone. All right. Setting track lines of high line interference and set location system is understanding how to use the set connections of tone and measures the countability Countability is everything through location of infusion. Setting up the electrical line box in position of square centers. Okay, you got 4 line setting line interference. So that's 0 lines of rotation, 4 lines of calculations, and 3 site location settings. 3 lines, set lines, and 7 lines of 3 line rotation. Center line is east, connections of west, and position of south, and north line and travel communication, setting direct signals. Now, in that direct signal locations, 4 lines of channels operate the surface location system and travel communications. Now, that's an indication line interference. That's 4 line provision, 3 line sectors. Okay, calculates the 3 line sectors in line conditions of 4 provision. Okay, so it correlates line interference of diamond core line, shift line, lock line, rotation, and position all levels. It's omni universe line condition of track communication setting, direct signals into 2 panels of operation surface and set locations. Okay. So we opened up the line signature line doors, electrical line in position locations to its measure, the accountability line rotation center lines its open signal and set locations and directions. Okay. So putting position line track lines is line conditionized system. That's 4 lines of pi and 3 lines of pi. Okay. So you understand the calculation setting. So 4 lines of equal lines of pi is 7 line rotation. Setting correlation line interference. That's 3 lines of calculation of 3 line, set location setting. Inline conditions of positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, and correlate line interference of negative line positive, negative line positive, and center calculation setting of a unique process calculation. Done by equation. All right, so that's going to travel with the set location setting and directions. Okay. Gone, but still there. All right. So setting these things up is really understand how to set a communication to settings to line center location, electrical setting, electrical infusion, line and rotations, calculation, offline system. To really understand how to modify calculation settings and directions. All right, so we got the cell line channels. So this location of 4 lines, so location setting directions. Window frame line sectors, calculation streamlines. So your cells are in calculation line and line rotations, 1 million lines of channels. Setting calculates in 60,000 platform line conditions. So that's 0 lines of 9, line conditions equal line conditions of 3, box lines of 3, triangulation line center interference, 12 line signature patterns, and correlation system. Okay, done by equation. All right, so we get indicating line interference, travel calculation line settings, triangulation, and line rotation, 7 over lines of levels, lines of operation setting, calculation settings, alpha, delta, theta line rotation surface, and set locations. All right. Theta lines the center line of the communication, electrical line wires, electrical communication setting, box line rotation setting, and calculation. Done by equation. All right, so that's also going to travel communications. Take it into the equation. Done, but still there. So, trying to figure out what's going on through all lines of modification, right? All central communication, your settings. So it's all direct signals, okay? Okay, so we bracket the communication channel lines. We change the stream lines indicators. The set location of 0 lines and 0 line and 0 line in triangle location system. Travel lines of 3 in position of 6 and position of 9. See how the center lines of 6 is in front and the 9's in back and 3's in center? There's a reason for that set location system because the weather line changes the conditions to its dimensional scale of operation. Okay? Now, when you get to that line center line interference, you circle line communication setting and redirect signals the location of its ground lines on operation surface. The corresponding line rotation sets a line of an energy bubble in set location setting and directions. Directing signal lines to center line interference, travels calculation streamline, and 0 line a new gravity line rotation surface and set location. Now that sets line connect and high settings. Now travel communication, lines of 9 lines across the signals. Center line communication in lines of center lines of 3, and set lines of 6 in the front of center calculation line direction system, and track communication lines of its sun and rotation surface and travel communication. Okay? So it's a lot to be understood, to understand line communication, what's going on with the calculation, right? Okay, so the travel line walks its surface. We travel communications out of the equation. All right, so center line position locations operates the surface. It's going to be traveling, see? From here to here. It's the center position. So once it reaches 6 lines, it center lines its communication setting, opens all signal line connections to the sun and the moon line operations, service locations of yin and yang, a process calculation setting and directions. Multipass! Done by equation. All right, that's center line calculation setting and direct signals out of the equation. Done, but still there. Are we still with line setting, line interference, and traffic communications? Bracket channels. Center line position location of 0 lines and 2 lines of 3. Calculation of the lines, line interference, position of 4, 7, and set location setting. So we take the 7 lines, set position, we take the 3 lines of 73, box line rotations into line condition of triangulation. Triangulation line centers of 6, rotates the service location, traffic line, center line interference, and traffic communications. Okay? That way equation. Okay, so as it set up line, center line interference, it travels very fast in set location travels, but it's still there in set location. It never goes away, even though you think it's gone, but it's not, it's still there. So as we come in the center line calculation line, we have an energy line setting. We can graph string location, the earth line rotation of center. Okay, earth line setting, track communications and directions. Okay, there's the earth line calculation setting and directions. Perception of our line signatures, center line rotation, the Fibonacci line swirl, set location of center. Directing signals, 1, 2, 3 lines of 4 lines of 5 lines of 6 and 7 location of 3 set location of directions. Directing line signals, lines of center communications, ground lines, and position operational line position locations to its high calculation setting and higher traffic communication in space and online. Now, sending direct signals locations, understand how to set positions to its tone. Tone line, center line, and positions to its Merkaba, to its set location setting, puts you into the center line of communication settings and set locations. All right. There you go. Multipass. So the center calculation line centers is cell modification line stream. And it's also going to be traveling. Boom. All right. All right, so we brought out set line connection system. Remember, there's a lot of formula equation settings and location settings. So we got line conditions at all levels. Come into farther lines, position operation, calculation line, indication line setting, indication, and indication location settings, directions. All right, center line condition of 6, equal line condition of the moon, rotates the surface, crosses signals, and set location setting, directions. Dimensional sail sets lines of 6, line rotation. The solar wind lines, calculation line positions. All right. Surface is line levels, rotates its vector lines, cross streamline and positions, graph line, streamlines, or rotation surface. Setting signals, lines, and cross lines, streamlines, and high calculation lines of 0 line communication in center position. Okay, done. That's also going to be out of the equation locations. Boom. Okay, so we got the Fibonacci line in sequence of balance and set location in one directions, right? Now we get the opposite direct location setting, the high set location system, and high center interference. If you look really close, you can actually see the 6th and the 9 line coming together. See? 6 and 9. So once the process comes in calculation line, it comes in its own line rotation of its own AI calculation setting of its information panel. The sets directs the signals into location of travel until it leads signal location settings, direct signals. Setting lines and calculation line settings in 0 line rotation and 2 line rotation surface into its calculation setting and direct signal. Directing signal line interference comes into calculation to your pyramid line rotation setting, divisional cortex line stream interference, and traffic communication, scan line settings, a new line operation surface, and set locations. Done my equation. Okay. All right. The center communication is really to understand how to set position of traction. Okay. Now the traction is extremely important because you have to really understand how it measures your line settings inside location of your system. So you got 2 panels line settings. Okay, cross line rotation positions, all right, like tic-tac-toe. So it's intertrace location setting directions. So we go through 0 lines, we go through star line rotations, and we go through box, and we go through triangulation line directions. We go through rectangle in calculations because that's where it is in your line set location time sequence, inside location directions, right? And we come line center line condition high system into an octagon set location setting, indirect signals, locations, stargate lines of portal, rotation center, triangulation of 3, triangulations of 4, and center line conditions of 1 set locations. Okay. Now, Understanding the graph line, the energetic graph line, strain line, rotation center, and rotation position, location, settings, and direct signals. Geographical map line rotation, center calculations, and Fibonacci line, Fibonacci line, Fibonacci line, Fibonacci line, Fibonacci line, and Fibonacci line is Stargate, line rotation, interference, and traffic communication setting, directing signals and set location setting, and the line rotation position of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols is set location of directions. Multipass. All right. All right, so that's going to disappear. Boom. All right. A lot is being said to be understood of what's going on through set location settings, right? Directing signals of letters, numbers, shapes, and calculations to its position. The energy lights, travel communications. Now we come in line setting as air lines in line positions, voice line grid lines, and your time sequence locations and patterns into Fibonacci line swirls, setting correlations and settings and 3-set location system into your telepathy line signatures, your dimensional line settings in your theta box location setting, indirect signals, and line calculation setting to your atom line rotation and calculation streamline into regulation line set location. Okay, it's all set up. Voice grid line, center line interference, sets location of 0, 0, 0, 0, and 4 set location settings, and set location lines of 3 set line condition setting, 4 lines of 3, 7 rotation surface, and set location directions. Okay? It's also going to travel. Okay? Bracket line channels. Set line high interference of 0 line rotations, 0 locations of 1, line condition of 0, 0. Sets lines of 2, sets position location indication lines of all calculation line interference of 1, 1. Set calculation lines of triangulation of 2 set line condition system through pi calculation stream. Okay. Now we take the pi lines in position of 2 lines in position of 3 set locations. All right. So remember, anything you do through formula equation, you can overline. You can overline its calculation. You can overlace. You can underline. You can overlay calculation lines, underline, connecting high setting. So you can do a lot through set location. To a solar sail is a correlation system of balance. Okay. Okay. So the same calculation of 0 lines. Remember, everything travels. Okay. A formula equation is not a box line center. It's a correlation of travel communications from inner line and outer lines of space. Inner core, outer core. Inner space, outer space. Inner limits, outer limits. Okay. So we got 2 line settings and line condition of levels. 2 set locations and center position. Okay. Now the set lines and equal line calculation travels in the center lines. You take the equal line center locations into Merkabah set lines of rotation surface and set locations. Now this directs line centers and platitudes its ground lines operation to its surface locations. It sets line positions to walk surface line calculation setting. Indirect signal. Okay. So you come in a coordination line, you colorate the line setting into the solar sail and direct signals in the 12 line rotation setting into the left line centers of space, and its correlation system into all line center location and right lines of Earth and rotation surface and set locations. Directing signals and set lines calculation lines. Center lines is operational line setting location setting and center position. Okay. So the solar winds, the solar sectors, and the solar sails of dimensional line rotation and south set locations indicate high line rotation, high line rotation position. Track line is center communication at center position. Okay. Okay. And it's also going to travel set locations. Okay, so there's an indicating line that stops on signal. Okay, so we center the position location 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 set locations on top, right? So that's a 12 indicating line centers of space, set location of 12, set locations of 12, line center line interference. 12, 24 lines of center, like in a high center location line of 24 to 10. 24, 34, and line center location of 10, 10 equal lines of 2, lines and location of 36 fields and set locations of directions. All right. So conditions of founders of space is now in the center line calculation of your timeline sequence and line setting and track communication system into a new cosmic universal line stream and set location. Okay. All right. So we're going to add the frame lines. energetic, 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 and 3 set locations of settings. All right, so we come inline setting location, into location grid line, into pi. Pi sets line calculation lines. So we take the 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, and 3 lines of 4, and set location of solar sail, and set location of line direct system in travel communications. Okay? We're going to save that on signal because we're going to come back and set location setting direct signal. Okay? That's going to be saved. There's a reason why things are saved. There's a reason why things go, right? Because you come back to these things, but you don't come back, you go forward. So you're adding frame through future line calculation line, and have alignment, line rotation, interference, and track communication system, track calculation setting, directions. So we go through one line setting, line interference, a box, triangulation line centers, box line conditions, triangulations, box line center, line interference, equal lines of 1, equal lines of 1, equal lines of 1, equal lines of 0, and graph line. Calculation line, direct locations, equal line calculation setting, in 0 gravity, calculation of ozone line rotation surface and set locations. All right. Okay, so equal line, the calculation of point system, position of point, and 3 lines. So you got a box lines, equal line conditions of all settings. That puts a line calculation setting to one position, 1 panel, in lines of 2, and set locations. All right. Systematic line setting, change. Crosses signals, vortex location. Travel line centers, line conditions of triangulations to an S line. An S line is systematic line change in position tractions. And we take the box line to 1 line and systematic change. We box the line rotations, box the calculations, box the streamline rotations, set a coordination line directions, setting coordination interference, travel line calculation, triangulation line, setting line interference, and travel communication in the line set location of its intelligence. Okay. I see the boat, figure out the wires. It's a lot to understand, to be understood. I keep saying that. So you have to understand the form location settings. All right, so we're going to save that in the signal because we're going to come back to the line rotations in set location system. All right, so adding line signature line strings a 0 gravity line rotation to setting. 0 line centers ozone line rotation, 0 line interference, sets lines of 5, set lines of 4, set lines of 3, set lines of 2, set lines of 1, set lines of 0. Okay? 0 lines operation locations of 0, operation location of 0, operation location of 0, operation location of 0, 5 calculation of 0, 0 line process string, 0 line position operation setting. Okay, it's all set up. So we do a triangulation reset lines of 3, calculation line interference of 0 lines, a 3 line calculation setting in dimensional sail, and rotation surface and set location system directions. Now, you have to understand how to set the lines, the calculation lines, how to change position locations into connections to oscillation, wind sector, line setting, line rotation surface, galaxy shift line, or set location setting and forming this equation. Okay? All right, so we take the 0 line and the 5 line rotations. We center the calculations. Now it's off position location track line. Okay? Setting direct signals. Okay? Setting calculation line setting in position location of 2, 0 line operation in 3 sectors. Set calculation. Done by equation. Right? So we got 2 line divisions, rotation surface, and allocate lines of the sun and moon line rotation and position and calculations. Film projection line stream and set line conditions. Directing signals. Right? 2 pen line interference, 1 position of 2 and 3 set locations. So that's 2 lines of perimeters, 3 lines of set location, the 5 line settings and direct signals. Sets position of 5, 5, 5, 5, and box location center and direct signals. In center calculation of 6 position location lines of 7 and 3 set location setting and directions. Okay? Done by equation. So, I know. So this is going to set position locations. All right. So we go into channel stream. Lacing line of 2 lines of panels. Okay. So it gets tricky now because it's the central lines of wave lines has to be in a certain line communication settings. 6 lines, equal lines of pi and set location. Okay. Pi generates this line stream line conditions of center lines of Fibonacci line swirl and set locations. Now it gets tricky because the set lines of 12 lines, the center line is communication, directing signals. All right. Operational line direct signals and set location of center. Now, When you get into that line center, you come into this position, location, attraction. All right. So we take the 6 lines, we circle line, rotation, surface, and set location, attraction, communications. Cross the signal, over line, cross lines, over pi position, attraction, to pi position. All right. Sets lines of solar, wind, solar sails, and set location of directions. Okay. So we got 3 lines of provision, 3 centers. We got 4 lines of track and set locations, and we got 2 lines of signature patterns. So we put position lines and line centers, a space line, operation surface, and set location of center. See? You see how you track communication of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, and you turn it in location to a system? All identified to its geometric operation of design, right? All right, so we take 2 track lines and rotational lines and center line communication to a cluster line rotation surface and center position. Okay, now this sets a signature line string. Center calculation, setting indirect signals to the grounds, set location of 3 lines, a 3 waving line set location system, attraction. Okay, the center communication line rotation center is line connecting. Okay, so really understand how to use it through a provision location to a system. Okay. Remember, you're dealing with the founders of space line. So you're going to see line calculation settings in UFO positions now. All through different signature pattern communications. Different models of technology line setting. Okay. All right, so that's going to travel lines, signals, and then rotation lines, ground position. All right, so we practice location settings. 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, 0 line, 4 line rotations. Equine conditions of 3, line set location of 7 position. Right? So we take the 4 line. You guys got to get used to the flowing rotation set location of your settings. We take the 4 line. We take the 7 line rotation system. Center lines of 7 lines of 4 lines of 3. Okay, so that's 3 over 4 and 4 over 3 is set location of directions, right? So the calculation of 0 lines. That's 4 provision location of travel line set location of settings. This directs signals and line cross lines at center line rotations and ground line operation on the surface. Now that directs signal line interference and travel communications 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right? Location grid and set location. There's location grid set up for founders of space so he can travel line settings and direct signal locations to his indication line settings and 12 measures. Okay? Done by equation. Okay, so in that line interference, that's done, so equation, gone. Okay, signature pattern stream lines. Setting direct signal locations to 1 canvas line stream. Now, canvas is line set location to a painting. It's like conditional line center interference locations. So we have 4 box line rotation surface set location setting and 1 Fibonacci line of center communications. All right. Now, directing signal line interference position to all levels of founders of space has to be this locations in line center signatures in set location setting, indirect signals, and set location system in operational line calculation setting to its pyramid, to its center line of Fibonacci, and its magnetic highway information line string in set locations. Okay? You look really close, you can see the 6 and you can see the 9. See how it's set up? You see? 6 and 9. It's set up. Okay? All we do now is add the triangulation. Done by equation. Multipass. Now we're done. Okay, so if everybody had fun. So it's all about understanding how to create the geometric operation and design location of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols in set location system to all line connection, line center interference of travel communications. All right? Through travel communication. Okay? Yeah, you're extremely welcome, Tina, Gypsy, Esther, Chris. Hope you had fun. 5-10 minutes. I'll see you soon. Adios.